pay.
Public universities directed to recall admission letters indicating full course costs, which has created panic, and instead issue letters indicating the subsidized amounts students are required to pay.
Kama amefunga marks na utakuwa unaona jina yake pale, unajua ni nani huyu.
Kudisplay jina yao mimi sikubaliani nayo.
High Court bans police from hiding their faces and obscuring registration identity or markings of any vehicles used by authorities during protests.
Kila mtu amekuwa akitaka kusema ya kwamba wameongea na Uhuru. Hata sasa hii ukisikia Mount Kenya kwa masishi, Uhuru, everybody is looking for validation. Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni refutes Raila Odinga's sentiments that former President Uhuru Kenyatta is behind the talks that led to the formation of the broad-based government.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us. I'm just here to take you through the news items making headlines across the country today before we embark with a big conversation on the broad-based government intrigues. Now, I am Ian Keitani, and our sign language interpreter is Clement Muli. We start the bulletin with matters education, and President William Ruto has directed universities to issue new letters to parents and guardians clarifying the actual fees required for their children's education at the university level. The president criticized universities for previously issuing misleading information, which he claims has caused unnecessary panic among parents by indicating full course costs instead of the subsidized amounts they are actually required to pay. Here's Ben Kirira with more.
President William Ruto has expressed concerns over the confusion caused by the university's initial communication, which he said could discourage students from enrolling in tertiary institutions.
We want letters to be released. Those that were released earlier to be withdrawn, and proper letters issued as to the amount of money the parent is supposed to pay.
Emphasizing the government's commitment to education, the president highlighted the increase in funding for higher education, which has been raised from 45 billion shillings to 82 billion shillings.
We will make sure that no child in Kenya remains out of higher education because of the ability of their parent. We will make sure every child has an opportunity to acquire higher education knowledge in our universities and in our TVETs.
President Ruto is currently on a 3-day development tour in Kisii County, which is set to conclude on Thursday. During his visit today, he inaugurated several key projects, including the electrification of Nyakiringi village and the construction of a Tago market in South Mugirango.
Niko na milioni 50 ya kujenga hii soko yenu ya Tago hapa. Na tunajenga soko 17 mpya kama hii Kisii County hii mzima. Tumewapatia bilioni 1.1 ya kujenga hizi masoko. Mukizalisha chakula yenu, mupate storage hapa, mupate cold room hapa, mupate market hapa. Ndio kilimo yenu iweze kuwasaidia kupata pesa.
Additionally, the president launched the Bomachoge Chache Affordable Housing Project.
Kama kuna jamii ambaye inastahili kuunga mkono hii program ya affordable housing ni watu ya Kisii na Nyamira, kwa sababu mashamba yenu ni kidogo. So nyinyi mkuje muishi hapa kwa orofa ya 7 ya 8, mteremuke muende kwa mashamba, jioni mrudi kwa orofa.
Kisii Governor Simba Arati lauded President Ruto's decision to include ODM party members in cabinet positions, suggesting that this move will help advance the government's development agenda.
Wale ambao wako na wasiwasi, sisi kama ODM hatujaweka mkataba wote na serikali ya Kenya Kwanza. Lakini tumekubaliana kwamba Mheshimiwa Rais lazima aongoze hii inji ndiposa izizame.
Tutashikana pamoja. Hii safari ambayo umeamua kushikanisha wa Kenya, hata sisi tuko ndani, hata hapa kwetu katika hii county tuko ndani, tunataka kufanya kazi pamoja.
Ruto's tour of Kisii County is expected to conclude on Thursday. Ben Kirira, K24, Nairobi.
Let's talk politics now, and Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni has come out to deny allegations by Raila Odinga that former President Uhuru Kenyatta is behind the talks that led to the formation of the broad-based government. Kioni wants Odinga to take responsibility for his actions, insisting that Uhuru does not support the idea of opposition being in government.
Nchi inachomeka, Uhuru ndiye alinipiga mimi simu. Uhuru akaniambia mimi tafuta Bwana Ruto ongea na yeye. Kenya ikichomeka hatutakuwa na nchi nyingine. mpaka hii tuzime hii moto, watu waketi chini waendelee waliwane. William ndiye akanitafuta na mimi nikaongea na yeye wazi kabisa. Mimi unajua mambo yangu, mimi sificheki mambo.
Nyinyi mnajua in the recent past kila mtu amekuwa akitaka kusema ya kwamba wameongea na Uhuru. Kila mtu hata sasa hii ukisikia Mount Kenya kwa masishi, Uhuru, everybody is looking for validation from Uhuru. But it is important to take responsibility of the decisions people have taken. There is no point of throwing words or dropping names of individuals if you think that the decision you took was wrong. Maneno ya kubeba Uhuru kila pahali. Wewe umeamua kwenda kujinyonga, wewe jinyonge, usikae kwa miti umefuta shingo alafu unasema Uhuru alikupatia kamba. Hapana, haiwezi kuwa namna hiyo. He wrote a letter to Kenyans and it was addressed to fellow Kenyans. That time we were dealing with the finance bill. He also said nothing is cast on stone, and William took back the finance bill. The letter is there. But his major concern is that Kenyans have been killed by the same people they elected to protect them.
To the corridors of justice, and the High Court has banned police officers from hiding their faces and obscuring identity, registration or markings of any motor vehicles used by authorities during demonstrations, further requiring them to affix name tags and service numbers on their uniforms. Ventura Komboka tells us more.
The High Court has issued conservatory orders requiring the National Police Service to comply with the 6th schedule of the National Police Act that stipulates police put on name tags when dealing with protesters. In a suit filed by Florence Wairimu after citizens' uproar on the presence of ununiformed police officers and use of vehicles with no plate numbers by alleged officers while making arrests during the recent Gen Z demos, High Court Judge Bahati Mwamuye has further directed that plain-clothed police officers deployed during demonstrations assemblies should not wear balaclavas or attempt to hide their identities that render them difficult to be identified by the public. The National Police Service has also been directed not to obscure the identification, registration or markings of any motor vehicles used by authorities during protests. A decision that has elicited mixed reactions from Kenyans.
Mimi mambo ya hii polisi kuwa na nini ya tags kudisplay jina yao, mimi sikubaliani nayo. Unaweza pata kuna wakati wa class between the two tribes. Unaweza pata huyo askari pia ni mmoja wa one of the tribes. So akidisplay jina yake hapa, itoe tu jina yake tu hapa, atakuwa anaji-expose from the other tribes. So hiyo mimi sikubaliani nayo. Waweke tu ile tu namba. Namba ukipiga tu hivi jina ya askari itatokea.
Tuliona wakati wa maandamano mapolisi walikuwa nakuja, mwingine amefunga mask, huwezi muona, huwezi jua ni nani. So kama amefunga mask na utakuwa unaona jina yake pale, unajua ni nani huyu. So mimi naungana na court. Na ingine tena niliona wakati hizi maandamano tu tuliona polisi wanakuja na gari haina number plate, yeye amevaa mask, hana kila kitu, so huwezi jua ni nani sasa unadeal nayo, hujui ni gari gani sasa unadeal nayo, so wakuwe na namba.
Last week on Tuesday, the new acting IG Gilbert Masengeli had announced the presence of plain-clothed police officers as acting within the confines of the law, sentiments that were also uttered and defended by Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki, who explained the move as a crowd-controlling technique used for crime prevention during demonstrations. Ventura Kwambuka, K24, Nairobi.
Now, ISPEC has conducted a raid and arrested a suspect for masquerading as an accountant in Embu following a tip-off from the public. The raid is part of the ongoing efforts by ISPEC to address concerns about professional ethics and regulatory compliance. The institute has a regulatory role in granting practicing certificates to members who intend to practice and register and register licenses to all accountancy firms in Kenya. Now, according to the Accountants Act, no person is allowed to practice as an accountant unless they hold a practicing certificate and a valid license. The authorities says documents, computers, and other records during the operation
have gathered enough evidence to prosecute the case, and here today we are working with the police. We are handing over the evidence and the masquerade to the police for prosecution. Downside of engaging someone who is not under our radar is that first you may end up getting substandard reports, and that then means you're not getting value for your money. Part of the work that the auditors do in their audit work, they also add value by evaluating your control environment, pointing out weaknesses through the management letter. That then it adds value to a business by prompting changes to the control environment set up by an entity. And where you're working with someone who has no training, practical experience, and continuous professional development from the institute, then they may miss out on such.
The National Assembly Committee on Appointments has today approved the nomination of Dorcas Oduor and Beatrice Eskol as Attorney General and East African Community Affairs Regional Development Cabinet Secretary nominees, respectively. Oduor is an advocate of the High Court who boasts of more than 30 years of experience in the field of law. Now, prior to her nomination, she held several positions at the ODPP, including Deputy Director, Head of the Economic International and Emerging Crimes Department. Beatrice Eskol, on her hand, has served as the CC for Water, Irrigation, Agriculture and Land Reclamation for Turkana County. She had also previously served as the Director of the Rift Valley Water Services Board and Project Officer at AMREF Kenya.
They proposed to Kenyans that I think it is time that we adopted this model of governance every time after elections. That it is not sufficient for the winner of a presidential election to just restrict their sights on the side of the country that actually voted overwhelmingly for the winner. Presidents going forward will look at the nation with the lenses of the entire nation and always give us the best possible brains in the leadership at the cabinet and other appointments.
And I want it to go on record that I salute, it must be on record, His Excellency Baba Raila Amolo Odinga for the support of the female gender, for the nominee that was exhibited, that gender rule on female is quite fundamental in this country by the President, Dr. Samuel William Ruto. I want also to say that for the peace which was supposed to be maintained, even it was exhibited yesterday when Baba was in a function that President, the late Uhuru, also informed that stability was important. Electing and appointing the women creates stability in this country.
Order. Mr. Speaker, for the President to think about broad-based government has brought a lot of peace in this country. This is an idea that we need to thank the President for, and for inclusivity, especially looking at different parts of this country, also balancing the gender finely and looking at professionalism for purposes of advisory. Mr. Speaker, I congratulate the two and congratulate your team for also having done a good job, having been quite professional in terms of the vetting and asking the relevant questions to get the right people to do the job.
I also want to thank the President for...
Well, that was all that we had for you at this particular moment in time, but I'll just hand you over to Brian Amoy, who's, of course, spearheading the conversation surrounding the broad-based government intrigues.
All right, thank you, Ian Kitani, for today's highlights when it comes to matters, news and current affairs and what has been making headlines across the country. Now, we continue with our coverage of the broad-based government conversation here in studio. Of course, a joint production between K24 and Kameme TV. And I want us to cross over to a reporter on the ground who is Oscar to give us a brief on exactly what is happening and what Kenyans are saying.